That's pretty much my focus in life. Drama. We're like the Kardashians of beer.
Sure.
Yeah.
The ugly Kardashians.
I don't know.
The bearded. Like if they add 50 pounds and give them a beard.
Yeah.
Sure. And none of that.
I can see it.
All
I can see it.
Yeah, it's. Hey, travelers! It's another week, and we traveled just ever so slightly out of Eau Claire to Altoona, Wisconsin, and by ever so slightly, I mean I can see the border just by looking out the back window. So we're at Modicum Brewing, which is just feet into Altoona. We are here, and I rounded up Troy.
Oh yeah.
Believe it or not, he's back, and we're blessed to have Eric with us this week, who is the owner, brewer,
genius,
many other things, I imagine.
Of Modicum?
Janitor.
Janitor? Yeah, it
mostly
seems like every
janitor.
Seems like every
Entrepreneur.
owner. Seems like every owner is also the janitor.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like the one thing I've been to like 200 breweries. They're always like, "Yep, just glorified janitor." It's like the most universal joke in the beer world.
It's not a joke in
Yeah.
brewing. I mean, really, it's 80% cleaning things.
You know, I've heard that over and over and over again.
It is consistent.
So for those of you that want to be a brewer out there, if you're good at janitorial services, consider it.
Yeah.
You never see that. It's always like, oh, I was in like whatever industry and I wanted to get into brewing. You should be like, I was a janitor and I wanted to get into brewing. You know?
Yeah, I mean that should be the industry that funnels people into the brewing industry.
We need to start like mining those for brewers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an untapped resource.
Solving problems here, guys. I don't know if there's even a labor shortage in the brewing world or not, but
No, not these days.
I don't know if probably the problem is we have too many.
Yeah.
There's a lot of shortages, including a can shortage, but labor is not one of them.
Labor's not one. No. It's funny because when I started brewing, I wanted to get into the brewing industry. It was really hard. There just weren't breweries to get jobs at. And now I see breweries posting jobs where it just says, no necessary skills. Just show up and we'll train you.
It's like, what?
I'm like, are you kidding me?
Come on.
How?
Well, I mean, so obviously you didn't this isn't your first job or your first time brewing. I know a bit of your story, but why don't you go ahead and just kind of give us your pedigree, if you will, of breweries?
Yeah, for those of us, or those that are listening for the first time.
Yeah. So I started out brewing professionally in 2009 at Lucette Brewing Company in Menominee.
Okay.
Just a little way down the interstate. They had just opened. They were a brand new brewery. I had been homebrewing for a long time, really wanted to get into doing it for a living, but like I said, back then it was tough. There really weren't any breweries around.
Yeah.
And if you were applying, they, said, well, we would like you to have 5 years of experience. And,
right.
Well, okay.
Entry-level job that requires 5 years of experience.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like every millennial's had to deal with that at one point or another.
Yeah. So I sent out resumes to every brewery within like 100 miles, basically. Yeah. And the only brewery that responded to me was Lucette. And I somehow had this stroke of genius in my resume when I sent out a cover letter, and I said, I'm looking for a job, but if you're not hiring, I would take an internship, apprenticeship kind of thing.
Sure.
And if you don't want an intern underfoot, I would love to just come hang out for a day.
Yeah.
And they responded, and they said, well, we're brand new. We just opened. We're not hiring. We don't really need an intern because we're not that busy yet. But if you want to come hang out, come hang out. So I did. Took a day off of work and hung out and brewed a batch of beer with the guys. And I think they realized, oh, this kid actually kind of knows what he's talking about. And you want to come back next week? And I said, sure. So I came back the next week and helped brew another batch. And pretty soon I was going there several days a week and helping out.
Showing up on a schedule somewhere.
Yeah, well, I basically worked, almost full time there for a year for free.
Wow.
I was brewing, I was kegging, I was canning, I was cleaning tanks, I was scrubbing floors, I was doing anything that they needed
That's
to
like
get done.
another unique story to the beer world. You never hear that. Somebody's like, I just love shower curtains so much. I just showed up to the shower curtain factory.
I love making widgets.
Yeah. It's like because you know people that work in beer, that's people are like, we'll just go and volunteer their time for time just because it's so much fun. Working in a brewery, but at the same time, like you don't see that anywhere else. No, or not.
Yeah,
Maybe like a dog shelter or something.
Yeah, I mean, if there's something you're passionate about, for sure. But yeah, not everybody's. I mean, it's sad, but not everybody's super passionate about their job. That's just how it works. But yeah, so I worked for free for a long time, and eventually one day, Tim, the owner, just like looked at me and goes, "So you kind of work here now?" And I was like, "Yeah, kind of, maybe." Hint, hint.
Do I? Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, let's put you on the payroll starting next week." I said, "Awesome."
Great.
So I started brewing there full time, doing everything from day to day commercial brewing of the actual batches, and then also kind of started taking over, helping out with R&D, coming up with new beers, which is always really fun. The commercial brewing on a somewhat larger scale is actually oftentimes kind of boring because you brew the same beers over and over and over again. People don't realize it, but when your flagship beer is 70% of your sales, that means that 70% of the time you're brewing that same beer over and over and over again. So doing the R&D stuff and lab work was really, really fun for me.
Yeah.
I love doing that.
And you almost have to have two minds. You have the creative, let's go make something new mind, and you have to have like, let's make this almost like a German brewing of like, we've been brewing the same beer for 1,000 years. We're gonna make sure we make it perfect every single time.
And it's funny, over the last 10 years, I've kind of flip flopped where I used to think that I just wanted to brew a different beer every day, and now I've really kind of latched on to I just want to brew the same beer and try to make it as perfect as I can.
Yeah.
Because that's really hard to do. And a lot of people don't realize how hard it is to make a beer really well over and over and over and over again.
Even as a consumer, I see myself gravitating towards maybe not buying the newest, coolest beer that's out, but being like, oh, I bet that's going to be like, I know exactly what I'm getting with this guy. It's perfection.
Yeah, it's tough. There's so many variables that go into brewing a batch of beer, and they're always changing on you. You know, the year to year, you get a different barley crop, you get a different hop crop.
Oh, sure.
All that stuff is constantly changing. Your water's changing. The humidity on the day you're brewing is changing. I mean, literally everything. So, to get that kind of repetitive quality is really, really tough, and it's something I've really become obsessed with.
Yeah.
So now I'm just happy to kind of brew our Hellas over and over and over and over again.
I will one day will be satisfied. Maybe.
Yeah.
And so when you were at Lucette, is that when they were still, because a lot of the people that know Lucette now know that they're in that other building with the pizza and all that stuff. Is that when they were still in the Logjam?
Yeah. So none of the pizza existed.
Right.
Same building though, right?
Well, the brewery portion of the building, where the actual brewing vessels are, that existed.
Okay.
The cold storage cooler, it's kind of across the way, existed, but that whole monstrosity in the middle that became the restaurant did not exist.
Interesting.
It was these two kind of random buildings.
Interesting.
And so there was no food, there was no tap room, there was nothing. We did when I first started, we didn't even do tours. We started eventually doing like Saturday tours, and we do like one tour every Saturday, and then that was it. And you'd come in and you'd get like a free pint with your tour, and that was it. Yeah. No tap room, nothing. Everything we did went out the door. It was kind of weird, but that was also 11 years ago. The beer industry was a very different place.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean, we've been doing this for 7 years, and the beer industry and everything around us is completely different than when we started doing this.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
it's unbelievable how much has changed in just that short amount of time.
Yeah, the thought of opening up a small brewery and not having a tap room it's insane to me now.
Right?
No, yeah.
Like I don't know how that brewery survived.
Well, I mean, there was also like just at the same point you could. There wasn't as much demand, or there was probably more demand for local beer. I mean, there wasn't like 150 options when you go into the store. So you could almost fill that pipeline, whereas now it's like you almost have to have the tap room just to like be your point of like buy my beer, come here, get that experience, go then.
Yeah, it was weird because there definitely was less competition.
Yeah.
But there were also just nobody knew what craft beer was or what local beer was.
Sure.
Like
yeah.
When I told people back then, oh, what do you do? Oh, I work at a brewery. Oh, you work at Leinekugels? No. There are other breweries.
Yeah.
You know?
Then you watch their minds blow.
Yeah. And I'm like, no, I work at this little brewery over in Menominee. And they're like, what? Like,
no way.
Like, what do you do there? It's like, we make beer. Why?
We already got beer. It's in the store.
Yeah.
Why don't you just
you
drink
can
that?
already buy beer. Like, why make it? Honestly, we'd always have people stop into the brewery because we were right on the bike trail on the Red Cedar River there. So right next to the parking lot. So people see this building with like steam belching out of it. And they'd be like, what the heck is that place?
Yeah.
So they'd walk over and knock on the door and say, what is this place? I'm like, it's a brewery. And like the look of confusion on their face was unbelievable. And like there's big, giant stainless tanks all over the place. And they're still like, what?
No way.
A brewery? So it was a different time. You know, people didn't know what craft beer was. The vast majority of people didn't.
Yeah, it's been definitely a slog. It's just converting one person at a time, ever since.
Yeah. There was a moment right around the time that I was leaving Lucette, I think that I've started to realize, oh, this is kind of becoming more mainstream now. Like, it used to be rare to walk into a lot of bars and see Bell's Two Hearted or you know, some know, pretty big craft brands, and you wouldn't see them anywhere. And now I can't think of a bar that doesn't have at least one craft option.
No, for sure. Even the White Pig in Mondovi has Leinekugels on tap.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's usually Spotted Cow. I can't think of even a townie bar that doesn't have Spotted Cow on tap. So
you go to Pennsylvania, every bar's got Yingling.
Right.
There's always that one that finds its way.
Right.
Yeah, but that around, especially in this area, 10 years ago, that was not the case.
No, I know for sure.
Yeah.
So where'd you move on to after Lucette?
Brewing Project.
Okay.
I
don't know where those get. Where brewing?
You never
Brewing
heard of that?
Project? Never heard
of
of
the Brewing Project. So Will Glass, who is the founder, head honcho. I don't know what his actual title is. President. Who knows?
Czar.
Yeah. Beer man. He and I went to high school together.
Oh, really?
Okay. Yeah.
What high school is that then?
Chippewa Falls Senior High School.
Ooh, Chi High.
Chi High. Yep. He and I grew up in the same town, kind of knew each other, didn't really know each other that well back then.
Yeah.
But when I was, working in Lucette and in the area, he had just opened the Firehouse Bar, which at the time was the only craft beer bar in the area.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time, a ridiculous amount of time.
I think
there.
everyone in this room, which is the three of us.
The three of us, yes. We've spent a ridiculous amount of time at the
If we
Firehouse.
shared the total logged hours, it would probably be astonishing.
Yeah, I don't want to know how much money I've spent there. But yeah, I used to go there all the time and just drink everything. I mean, there was such a wide variety of beers and styles of beer that no one had ever heard of. And
that was back in the day when I was still like, what is this style I've never heard of? Now, if you come to a brewery and you see a style you haven't heard of, it's like, what?
Yeah. What did they just invent?
Yeah, right.
Or like, what book did you dig this out of? Like, how far back did you have to search to find this Grotsky?
And maybe there's a reason that beer style died out.
But you still try it nonetheless.
You still try it.
And you're like, wow, man.
I'm here.
So he and I knew each other, just really got to know each other through the Firehouse because he owned the place and I was there all the time. And he knew I was a brewer at Lucette and he sold a lot of our beer there. And we would do tap takeovers and all that stuff. And we just got to know each other. And then one day he just kind of called me and said, hey, I'm going to open a brewery and would you want to come be my brewer?
Yeah.
And at that point, I was still in that phase of I want to make new beers every single day.
Yeah.
And that was kind of what he pitched. He was like, I want to start a brewery and I want to make 100 beers. And I was like, awesome.
Wow.
That sounds really fun.
Sign me up.
Yeah. So we kind of started out the planning phases. It went through a few different iterations of business model. And originally, the plan was, I think, to do a 3-barrel system, and then he was like, well, let's do a 5-barrel system, and then, well,
it's just
maybe,
funny you telling this story now that we know where it ended.
yeah, maybe we'll do a 10-barrel system. And I was like, well, if you're gonna do 10, you might as well do 15. And he's like, oh yeah, I suppose you're right. And he's, well, if you're gonna do 15, you might as well do 20. So okay, let's get a 20-barrel system. Just kept going up. But yeah, I think the original plan was a 3-barrel taproom only kind of
with
place.
a small overall building.
Yeah, well, it was originally going to be in the where the post office is now, down by Lazy Monk down there.
Okay, sure, yeah.
In the Phoenix Park.
Phoenix Park, yeah. So that was the original plan. It didn't work out for a few reasons, but eventually we found that old auto garage where we ended up putting the original brewery.
I know Landon knows the story, but you know the funny part about that garage? My uncle owned a paper shredding company in that garage.
Really?
So there was like a couple of dings on the wall that I had put in there with a forklift.
There's a few things on the wall that I put in there with a forklift.
Yeah. There was like my uncle had me driving a forklift for him back in the day, and I was just like, yep,
that's it.
Fuckers are welcome.
Yeah,
swear. I'm sorry, guys.
That's all right. You're allowed to swear.
Okay, I
believe it or not. Troy usually we have a pretty good like dinging count of when Troy swears. It's because you have to think harder about not swearing than you do to swear.
I've been having that problem already.
Right?
I typically swear like a sailor.
I got into like our first kid now doesn't like repeat anything we say, so I can still swear around my kid. It doesn't affect him because like, he won't repeat anything. But now we have another one. I'm like, oh shoot, like, I gotta work on this.
We're gonna have to wait. You got about a year, maybe a year and a half, something like that.
I'm gonna have to like man up and eventually just quit swearing.
Yeah. But yeah, he used to tell me every time that we'd go into the old brewing project, hey, do you see up on the wall there? I put those there. I'm like, yeah, Troy, I heard. The last
you told me before
10 times that we were here.
Shred paper.
Yeah, so Will found that building, and he said, hey, when you're done with work today, come check out the new building where we're going to put the brewery. And we walked in there, and I kind of was like, are you kidding? Like, there's no way we can brew beer in this building. It was a shack.
I would have said the exact same thing.
It was nuts. The floor had to be completely torn out, and like you could see daylight through the ceiling in a lot of places. And and it just smelled horrible. And I was like, man, breweries have to be clean. Like, how do we clean? And he, to Will's credit, Will is, more than anybody I've ever met, he is a just like kind of weird visionary where he sees the potential in something that I just I don't have that ability. If I see something, it's either, oh, that's great or that's bad, and he's like, well, it's bad, but it could be great.
Yeah.
I'm like, really? But he's a
That being said, though, that's also still a pretty neat spot because it was kind of tucked away. I mean, that was like an undeveloped part of there's a waterfront property that hasn't been developed. Mm-hmm. Say that for any city is kind of like a unique future. Yeah, like usually that's the first lane that gets developed.
Yeah.
So kind of having like that, kind of being by yourselves almost over there was kind of fun.
And Will, again, to his credit, he always he's got his ear to the ground. He's got his fingers in a lot of pies. He knows what's happening. He's got he's got his finger on the pulse. He knows what's going on. Yeah. And he knew just that area was going to be turning into something in a few years. He said, well, that's why we're going to put the brewery there. And it obviously worked out really well.
Running trails there. There's 2 breweries there now.
But when we originally put the brewery there, everyone was like, why? That's like, it's horrible. It's like, I can't find the place, No, we would get phone calls every day of like, I'm driving around trying to find your brewery. Where is it? I'm like, you turned too early. You should have kept going. Like that area where you think is just a giant trash heap. There's a brewery.
That's where the brewery is.
Yeah.
It was a bizarre spot for sure.
The dark, dimly lit area. Go in there.
Yeah,
that's where it is.
Yeah, you don't. The area that your just gut says don't go. That's where you want to go.
I probably, if I've said it once on this show, I probably said it 500 times. The craft brewing industry would not survive without GPS. Some of the places that I've had to go to find a brewery. If you had like a MapQuest printout, you would have never found these places.
Dave's Brew Farm.
Dave's Brew Farm,
yeah.
Bang Brewing in the cities, back in that kind of like industrial area.
Even when you get there, you're not sure that you're there.
You see the windmill, and you're just like, that's where I need to be.
No, it's not a windmill. It's a grain silo, and you're like, oh, it's a nice grain silo.
Bang.
But but you're like, so there's this other brewery, but I'm looking for Bang. It's in the grain silo.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Just GPS has really helped.
Yeah, I know. It's
technology.
Imagine that.
But that old tap room, there was you could maybe get 10, 12 people at the bar.
Yeah, maybe.
If that. And I mean, and for those that are listening, this is pre-COVID time, so we need to remember what it used to be like when you could actually
next to people.
You could be next to people.
Yeah, and we crammed them in there. You could probably sit maybe 12 people at the bar, and then we had a handful of four-person tables.
I had one time a friend of mine explained to me that you could tell the different phases of the band Red Hot Chili Peppers by the different guitarists they had or whatever. You could almost tell the same thing about Brewing Project by the different brewers that were there.
Sure.
And I would say your phase was probably one of my favorite phases of Brewing Project.
Thank you.
Because you had like the East meets West. You had the Scottish Ale. What was that? The Sticky.
Old Alliance.
Old Alliance. Yeah.
You guys made some fun beers.
AULD, Old Alliance. Yeah.
Yeah. There was a lot of fun beers coming out of Brewing Project at that time, which for Eau Claire was like a lot of different stuff. And,
a lot of that was that Will really just kind of gave me free license to do anything, but he always had lots of ideas as well.
For sure. Yeah.
So, and he and I come from beer from a very different angle. What he likes things that I'm not necessarily into, and I like things that he's not necessarily into. So for the two of us kind of coming up with a portfolio of beers, those first few years, we brewed a really wide range of styles.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
A kind of ridiculous amount of beers we made.
Oh, yeah.
And, we made a lot of beers that we made once and never made again. Some things worked out and some things didn't.
Yeah.
And just the nature of the beer industry is you can make a really great beer, but it doesn't mean people are going to buy it.
No, for sure. That is true. Sometimes the best beers, you're like, come on, just
make it again. It's like, well, nobody makes it.
And the numbers weren't good. And you're like, I don't care.
But inevitably, at least what I've heard, I have no brewing experience, but I've always heard there's always that one guy that'll come in and go, hey, when are you going to brew that beer again? And then you go, it didn't really sell well. And he's like, well, I bought a bunch of it. Yeah. So you're going to brew it again?
Yeah. I literally bought 10 cases of it.
Yeah. Yeah, we get that a lot here because we're constantly rotating beers.
For sure.
So it's you can't please anybody,
right?
Because there's the people who are, well, you haven't brewed anything new in a while. And it's like, well, okay, we'll brew something new. So you brew something new, and then they come back and they're like, well, where's my other beer that I liked? Well, you wanted me to brew something new.
But I brewed something new. Drink that.
How do you make up your mind? You're driving me crazy.
I know. And the people who are shocked to find out that their favorite beer doesn't sell well.
Yeah.
Like, I love that beer. And it's like, yeah, well, no one else does.
Everyone else just assumes they have like the...
You need to really talk to your friends and get them to like that beer too.
Yeah.
That's why I say if you like a beer, man, you got to buy it. Otherwise,
Yeah. You can't just guarantee. You can't assume it's always going to be there.
I think we've been saying that for as long as we've been doing this.
I try.
If you like a beer, buy it.
Keep buying.
Because you may never see it again.
So, but yeah, I mean, for sure, that was, I would say, like as Brewing Project has developed over the years, there was definitely the Eric phase, and that was, and that was also before I had kids, and the Brewing Project's probably the closest bar to my house.
Sure.
So I was like,
pretty easy.
It was too easy to walk there. So yeah, that was a fun time. That was a good brewery. I mean, obviously they're still good breweries.
Yeah, and how many years did you end up spending there?
3?
3, yeah.
I think.
Nice. Wow.
3-ish. I don't know.
It's always tough to remember how many years you spent at a place, right? Unless you really hated it.
Yeah.
Then you definitely remember.
2 years, 56 days.
I don't think my brain processes time right. Like people are, how long ago was that? I have no idea.
Yeah. Can I say the other day? That can literally mean 2 days ago or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
3 months.
Same way.
The other day.
And I'm not going to lie to you. I'm the same way, except for, like I said, things that you really hate. You seem to remember how long that you had to endure that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love being at Brewing Project. It was, like I said, an amazing opportunity to just brew everything and anything. And, I would come in and say, I want to make this beer. And Will'll say, all right, go do it. And then he'd come in and say, I want to make this beer. And be like, all right, I'll figure out how to do that. And we brewed some weird stuff. Really weird stuff. Stuff that there was a few beers we did a beer called Stolen Mile.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah,
like a golden ale with lemon zest and basil.
Yep.
And that was entirely Will's idea. I never would have thought of it. And when he told me, he pitched me the idea, I thought, God, there's no way that's going to be good. That beer was awesome.
It was great.
And it sold incredibly well.
And honestly, at the time, now, we're in that stage of craft beer world where adding something like basil is pretty tame.
Yeah.
But when you brewed that I looked at that and I went, basil. Is it like a pizza beer or something?
Yeah,
you know?
I would still say that maybe this wasn't even an EU beer, but the El Dorado, was it? The El Camino?
El Dormino.
That's what it was.
Which was a
black IPA?
Hybrid of El Dorado and El Camino.
Wonderful beer. That was probably one of the best black IPAs I've ever had.
Thank you. Yeah. That again was a kind of collaborative beer that Will and I worked on.
Yeah.
Mostly because I think neither of us really liked black IPAs.
Right, let's find one we can drink.
Yeah, and I was like, well, why don't we make a good one?
Yeah.
Like, if we haven't found one we like, let's make one we like.
Yeah. Rick, we have the technology. Right?
Yeah. We have a brewery. we have a brewery in a building that we spent a lot of time cleaning up so we could brew beer in it.
Yeah.
My very first day as an employee of the brewing project, I walked into that old shack and fired up a pressure washer filled with bleach or something and just went to town, and all the walls, all the floors, all the ceilings, just the black gook that came rolling down the walls. It was awful, but we cleaned it up.
Oh yeah.
Actually, my proudest moment at the brewing project was not even beer related. We had what is that app that I hate? Yelp. We had a Yelp.
Yes.
A Yelp review of a guy who said, they've got some beers on tap that they claim to brew there. But the brewery's so clean that it looks like it's just for show.
Come on.
I don't think they actually make beer in this building.
Wow.
You're instead of just being you guys do a good job cleaning, he has to,
And I was like, because all that really expensive stainless is just for show, buddy.
It's like hanging in a fancy chandelier in a dining room.
Yeah, it's we don't have any money. Are you kidding me? So
I would say if you go into a brewery and the tanks aren't shiny and it doesn't look clean, maybe you shouldn't be at that brewery.
Maybe go somewhere else.
Yeah.
So then, at what point you're like, you know what, I'm going out on my own here?
I don't know when that exact moment was, but I think
collection of 10,000 little moments.
Yeah, no, it just it's weird because when I left, for some reason, all these people who I don't know, but who were fans of the Brewing Project or something, were like, "Oh yeah, Eric and Will had a big fight. Eric's leaving because he's pissed." And I was like, that is not what happened at all. And people still come in here sometimes and they're like, "Oh yeah, Brewing Project, you used to work there, but you hate them now, right?" And I was like, what are you talking about? I've never said that.
For as big as Eau Claire is, Eau Claire is almost 70,000 people?
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, something like
70-ish.
And then Altoona, that's not even including Altoona. I think the whole county of Eau Claire is 100,000 people. It couldn't act more like a small town.
It's so gossipy. Yeah, it's especially the beer scene is really gossipy.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
On that note, we still have to pay our bills, so we do need to take a little break for our sponsor, and we're going to get right back into all the gossip about Eric leaving the Brewing Project and starting his own place.
He's going to tell you about the knife fight he had with
a few black eyes.
Yeah. So we'll get right back. We're going to fill up our beers, and we'll be right back. This podcast is sponsored by Grazie Aveda Concept Salon and Paradise Massage, where whole body care is their specialty. Now offering massage, nail, and hair care services tailored to everyone's individual needs. They're conveniently located at 4638 Gulf Road in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, or find them online at graziesalon.com. And we're back. Time to address the controversy. The white elephant in the room.
So much controversy.
That's why we started this podcast, so we could be controversial.
Yeah,
that's pretty much my focus in life. Drama. We're like the Kardashians of beer.
Sure.
Yeah.
The ugly Kardashians.
I don't know.
The bearded. Like if they add 50 pounds and give them a beard.
Yeah.
Sure.
And none of that
I can
weights
see
in the
it.
butt. It's all
I
in
can
the
see
gut.
it.
Yeah, it's definitely all in the gut. Yeah. So yeah, when you left Brewing Project, even though people think there was a lot of controversy, there was none at all.
There was none. No.
Yeah.
Like I said, my whole stint there. Back in those days, there were really just like 3 of us.
Right.
It's a huge company now.
Yeah,
And every time I drive by, I'm like, God, there's a lot of cars there. Like, how many people work there now? Because it was Will, it was me, and it was Calla Nelson, who was our sales rep.
Yep.
Yep.
And then, we had a few part-time bartenders.
Sure.
And that was it. I mean, that was the whole company. So the beer menu and production schedule was really just that collaborative effort between Will and I and brewing whatever we wanted to make. But it just kind of became more and more apparent that we were kind of tugging in different directions.
Sure.
Because he liked different styles of beer and I liked different styles of beer, but they very rarely overlapped. So it just kind of became apparent, like, well, it's his company. He should be able to make whatever kind of beer he wants to make.
Yeah.
But as a brewer, I also want to make the kinds of beers that I want to make. So I just, we sat down, we talked, and I said, you want to do certain things that I'm not really that interested in doing. I much rather would brew Belgian beers and lagers for the rest of my life.
Yep.
So it's like, you just need to find a brewer that is going to work and do what you want to do with this company, because it's your company. I don't want to like derail your dream.
Right.
Yeah. No, for sure.
You're the one who took all the debt and risk and started a business. Like, I don't want to be standing in the way.
Right.
So I think I stayed on for an additional 6 months until he found a brewer.
Okay.
Took a long time to find a brewer. But yeah, I stuck around and kept brewing beer until Ryan, who replaced me as head brewer, came on board, and then I left to start this tiny little place.
Yeah.
And I think we would both agree that there was no drama, but we're both much happier.
Yeah.
He gets to do what he wants to do, and I get to do what I want to do. And,
No, for sure.
And it's great.
I mean, you're the first brewery in Altoona.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Welcome to Altoona.
If you're not familiar with Eau Claire, Altoona, for the folks out there, essentially you don't know when you leave one area and enter the next.
You need to really watch those signs.
Yeah.
That's the only way you know.
Eau Claire and Altoona essentially have merged together at this
Yeah,
point.
I could spit into Eau Claire from where we're standing.
Yeah,
sitting
absolutely.
right now. And in fact, every day people stop in here and say, "I thought this place was in Altoona."
You're like, oh,
Welcome
maybe
to
it
Altoona.
It is.
Factually correct.
Yeah.
So this is an old bank, correct?
Yep. This was originally a bank.
Oh, what a fantastic use of a bank space.
Yes.
And then it was a church, and now it's a brewery.
Wow.
And we still have the bank vault.
Oh, nice.
We were originally planning
That's
to,
where you keep
to
your
remove
recipes.
it. Oh yeah, that's where we keep the rest. That's where I keep
You're
all
like-
the money I
You're
make.
like Coke. Only 2 people at one point know the recipe.
Yeah, and they can't be in the same place at the same time.
Both you have a cyanide capsule in your mouth.
Yeah. No, we call it the malt vault because it's where we store all of the malt.
Wow, that's
Yeah, it's pretty
very
good.
descriptive.
We were originally planning to take it out, but bank vaults are really hard to remove.
You don't say.
Believe it or not.
I mean, you just got to get a super villain to take it out for you. Those guys make it look easy.
Yeah, they're really good at it.
Yeah.
So we kept the bank vault because it was very expensive to get rid
And
of.
also kind of just, how many breweries got a vault?
Yeah, we had to kind of change our original floor plan around a little bit. Actually, we're currently sitting in our event room.
Yeah.
This was supposed to be the brewery, and where the
Oh.
brewery was supposed to be the event room.
Hmm.
But the bank vault got in the way. So changed the floor plan a little bit, and we're all good.
Just the endless adaptations one must do when trying to make a production space in a non-production space area.
Yeah, try to put a brewery in a bank.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Simply
it's really
put
not
a brewery
easy.
in a bank.
But yeah,
So the name Modicum, where did that come from?
sure. Sorry, I was drinking beer.
No,
I
that's-
wasn't ignoring you.
We
What the?
well, you're not my wife, so
So modicum, the definition of the word modicum is a small amount of something, especially something considered desirable or valuable.
Sure.
I know nothing about running a brewery. I mean, I can run the production side of the brewery. I know nothing about business. Still, I mean, this place has somehow survived despite my best efforts to drive it into the ground. No, I'm very fortunate that when I planned to start this place, I was writing up a business plan because that's what you do when you're starting a business, especially when you don't know anything about business. You start with a business plan. And
it forces you to think.
Yeah, it forces you to be like, should I do
what
this?
am I doing here?
Is this really a good idea? Back in the day when I was brewing at other breweries, everyone said, when are you going to open your own brewery? And my answer was always, never. Are you kidding me? I've seen what how grumpy all my bosses are all the time. Like, I don't want to be that. But then here I am. But when I was working on my business plan, I showed it to my father-in-law, Mike, because he's a pretty smart dude. And I just said, hey, look it over and let me know if you think I'm insane.
Yeah.
Or if you think I'm on the right track.
A father-in-law is always a good option too.
Yeah, because he's always honest.
Yeah, a father-in-law's like, I'm not gonna let you screw over my kid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So he was he's just a great guy, and we get along very well. So showed him the business plan, and he read it, and immediately just said, "When do we start?"
Oh,
yeah.
It's like, oh.
Okay.
Well,
I
convinced him.
Yeah, that was not my intent. I just wanted to get his feedback, and he said, "No, this sounds great, and I'm retiring next year, so let's start a brewery together." It's like, okay, so and he was a construction engineer for most of his life,
sounds
so
like a good guy to have.
He's
in your back
real
pocket.
good at building things.
Yeah,
and he built this entire brewery.
That's awesome.
It put up all the walls, and we installed all the equipment together, and somehow, our overlapping skill sets worked. My skill set is very minimal, but somehow it worked out. And so, like I said, I've been just trying to run this place into the ground, and he's keeping it afloat somehow. But
that's a good person to have around.
That also, you keep making good beer, you'll probably keep selling it. So
yeah,
I mean, at the end of the day,
we try to make good beer.
Like you can have the best ambiance in the world, but like the liquid speaks for itself. That's
and that was really our whole business model from day one. The whole point of Modicum being a small amount of something. I wanted to be a tiny brewery. I never wanted to worry at all about growth or expansion.
Right.
I'd spent my whole brewing career working at two breweries that were in a constant state of growth, and that's a headache. It's a real headache because
it's never ending.
It's never ending, and everything's a moving target,
right?
From the business side and from a production side. And, breweries are very capital-intensive businesses. You have to buy a lot of very expensive equipment to keep making more and more and more beer. So it's just like a constant nightmare of like debt and
it's
a cycle.
It's one of the more unique businesses too, because like you said, everything is so expensive that you have to buy. But an actual can of beer is not that expensive. So it becomes a volume game. You have to sell a lot of volume to make that money back, and then you have to get distributors, you have to get trucks, you have to have loading docks, forklifts.
Yep, and that's the other thing people don't realize when they start breweries is you can make all the beer you want in the world, but it has to go somewhere after you brew it.
Yep.
You can't just brew it and then dump it down the drain and then brew another batch of beer.
Yep.
It's not a very sustainable business model.
It's not like me homebrewing, then, is what you're saying. I dumped it not because I wanted to brew more. It was just like, wow, this isn't good.
Yeah. And I'm not a salesperson. I know nothing about marketing. I honestly just have no interest in any of that stuff. I like making beer.
Human.
So I wanted a business model that I didn't have to worry about sales and marketing and advertising and supply chain management. You
don't have to make a 4th of July poster design, hire a graphic designer to be like, our 4th of July promo or whatever.
Or just negotiating contracts with distributors and just like I don't want to ever do that.
Yeah,
that sounds awful. And I have a lot of friends who work in the distribution side of the beer industry, and I just, like you. And I just don't have any interest in it.
Yeah.
Just you saying that makes me want to hug you. Is that weird?
a lot of numbers and things and moving and whatnot.
Yeah, it's not fun.
Yeah, no.
So the whole point of this place was to be as small as possible, but also still pay the bills.
Right. Right.
and I think, we sized our brew house and our cellar and all this stuff accordingly to get to a point where we could brew whatever we wanted, but brew enough of it that we weren't just like, oh crap, we have to make rent now.
Right.
Yeah. Brewery first, obviously, being a taproom first, you want people to come in here. You guys can control every means. Your beer is not sitting on a truck somewhere. That's not sitting in a back room of a grocery store somewhere. You have all the control.
Yep, there's a lot of benefits to our business model, and that's a big one. When you get your hands on a glass or a can of our beer, it's fresh. It hasn't been sitting in a warehouse for who knows how long.
Right.
We've all bought beer on shelves that was way out of date.
Yeah.
And it's awful.
You didn't realize it at the time. You always buy that beer and you're like, oh yeah, I've been seeing this in a long time, and you never think to look at the date.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, I
bought
bought that, and then
I can't.
And I don't. I usually, I'm like a kid in a candy store when I'm picking out beer. You find something, you get it home, and you're like, that doesn't taste like I remember.
Yeah.
If I've ever visited your house, you've had out of date beer before.
I've got plenty of out of date beer.
I'm always just bringing some random beers. I'll just leave at people's houses, be like, and that's where you live now.
Mm-hmm.
And
not my problem anymore.
And it only increased with the pandemic, because it's just me and sometimes my wife drinking beer. You don't ever have people over anymore.
Yeah.
So then you're looking at the back of the fridge and you're going, nope, can't drink that by myself. Well,
28% ABV.
Yeah. And some of that stuff you shelf and whatever. But
now we've kind of talked about your business side of it, but what's your approach to beer when you go to make a beer? You said Belgians, lagers, things of that nature. But like why those styles? What makes? Because I would say you're definitely a more yeast forward brewery.
Sure.
Like you're not making big sours, big hop beers. I mean, I don't know. Have you had a milkshake on yet?
No. And we never will.
Well, I guess the next question, on top of that, after you answer that one, would be, when's the seltzer coming? And what unique fruit flavors are you going to give us?
I'll figure that out.
You're going to make 6 of them?
Yep. Yeah, we're gonna build a whole seltzer facility. The name Modicum is more than just the name of the business. It's really our approach to everything.
Sure.
So our beers contain small amounts of good things. We don't do anything that is over the top and ridiculous and aggressive or overly assertive in any way. Everything we do is all about balance, subtlety, complexity, but a nuanced complexity.
Mm-hmm.
When I was younger and was brewing, I definitely loved beers that smacked you in the face, like, whoa, what?
Yeah,
I had no idea beer could do that.
Hello.
But the older I get and the more I brew and the more beer I drink.
I actually prefer it that way.
The more
I like the beer too.
Yeah. But I've found that those types of beers interest me less and less and less. Yeah. And I always go for the beer that is more balanced and the beer I can drink 6 of in a single sitting. I don't really understand the point of a beer that you can only drink 5 ounces of.
Yeah.
Just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to me as a beer drinker, and it really doesn't make any sense to me as a brewery owner.
I honestly could not agree with you more on that. It's almost like the beer industry is going through had to go through an adolescence phase where you're just like anything's awesome, and then you get a little older and you're like, I actually don't care about that.
Yeah.
What's the thing you've perfected? Where's that?
And I really think that in some ways we're probably still, the scale of all of that is still that big. Because there are still a lot of beer drinkers that are coming on.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And it's like a train. Where do you get on? At what point are you hopping on the train? And what point are you happy with where you hopped on the train? Yeah. Because some of them get off and get back on again somewhere else, and that's what they're happy with.
Yeah.
I've always been happy, and maybe it's because of where I grew up. I've always been happy with drinking beers that are sessionable, which I would say that you make all of the sessionable beers.
Thank you.
Because they're very palatable. They're not going to hit you over the head or punch you in the face. Even the leafless we had talked about your leafless that you go sapping for all of the maple syrup. Yeah, that's a term that I just learned too.
It's a real thing.
Yeah. And here in Wisconsin we have plenty of trees for that. So that beer, when you see maple, oftentimes when you go into a brewery and you see maple in a beer, you're thinking maple is going to be the dominant flavor, right? No matter where it's at in the ingredient list, if you see maple, you think, wow, it's probably going to taste like pure syrup.
Yeah.
That is not the case with leafless.
No. I don't ever want a beer that tastes like syrup.
If I had to,
I would just drink syrup.
Yeah, right. You can do the rabbit from Super Troopers
we
and just
do
chug
that after weightlifting.
All of my
back in high
powers
school.
derive right here from my lips.
We used to do that after weightlifting in the morning. We would go and just like chug syrup in the cafeteria. But that was also like when you're like 16, not when you're like in your 30s.
Yeah, it's funny because you were touching on this with craft beer going through an adolescent phase, but and far be it from me to tell people what to like. Honestly, no judgment. If you love milkshake IPAs, awesome. I'm glad you have something you love.
There's options.
Yeah,
for
and
it.
I don't. I don't want to rain on your parade. I personally don't ever want to drink those.
Yep.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's great. That's why the beer scene is so great and varied. But what kind of bothers me is this, and I try not to be negative, but there's people get kind of snobby about beer, believe it or not.
What? No.
Believe it or not.
I believe it.
But people have this conversation all the time of like they talk about beer connoisseurship as if it were like a mountain that you're ascending.
Sure.
Yeah.
And people always tend to refer to whatever they like the most as the peak of the mountain.
Yep.
You know?
Right.
Like, oh, yeah, I used to drink these kinds. I started out drinking Bud Light in college, and then I got into Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, and then I got into all these other beers. And now I've arrived.
Yeah.
My palate has matured to the point where I can drink this milkshake IPA. And some of it is based in this like weird like manly thing of like I drink because 10 years ago it was all about I drink the most IBUs,
Right.
give me the most bitter West Coast IPA
IBU chasers.
Yeah. And now nobody cares about bitterness. It's all about like just how ridiculous the beer can be.
Sure.
How many things can we put in it? And for me, like I started out drinking macro beer too.
Yep.
I
think we all did.
First beer I ever had was probably an MGD or something like that.
I had a lot of Colorado Kool-Aids.
Yeah. But then you discover something else. The first beer that ever blew my mind and got me interested in craft beer was a beer from Dogfish Head Brewing Company called Midas Touch.
Oh yeah, saffron
and honey and a Belgian yeast strain and like there's
beautiful beer.
Yeah, and I was at a party in college drinking crap beer.
Yeah.
And somebody put that in not craft beer, crap beer.
Crap.
Not crap beer. I'm sorry. We were drinking cheap, affordable, fine American made products.
Owned by foreign companies.
Yeah. But we were drinking, crappy beer, and somebody brought this beer and put it in my hand, and I drank it, and for the first time in my life I took a sip of a beer and was like, what is this?
Yeah.
I looked at the label over and over again. I'm like, what is in this beer? Why does it taste this way? I had no idea beer could taste this way. And okay, it's this brewery out of Delaware, and maybe I should find more beers from this place in Delaware. It was the first beer that opened my eyes up to like beer could be.
Back in my East Coast days, Dogfish Head was like was the staple. I remember that was like the first IPA I had was a 16. It was almost undrinkable back then. You drank it. I mean, we're talking like 2010, 2008. I'm like, oh my God, who could drink this?
Yeah.
Then like 6 months later, I'm like, I'll buy a case of that, please.
No, I'm not ashamed to say that the first time I bought a 6-pack of Bell's Two Hearted, I thought it had gone bad, and I dumped it down the drain.
Sure.
The whole 6-pack.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is obviously spoiled. because nobody would ever want to drink this. And obviously I love that beer.
Yeah.
But it was the first IPA I'd ever had, and I was a young 21-year-old kid. I had no clue what I was doing.
Buck.
Yeah.
And it's funny because we see that here all the time. Talk about people getting on the train, getting off the train. We get the weirdest mix, and by weirdest I mean the best mix of customers.
Weird can be good.
Weird's good.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
great. But
Oftentimes it is.
Yes.
We get very, experienced, knowledgeable beer drinkers in here.
Yep.
Right next to somebody who has never been in a craft brewery before.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And it's astonishing to me. It's so crazy.
It's amazing how, in 2021 we're still getting people that have never ever had a craft beer.
Yeah.
Or you're still getting the people that are judging the beer by the color alone.
Yeah.
Only. Oh, I don't drink dark beers. Okay.
Yeah. We put a lot of effort into training our staff to
Yeah.
have knowledgeable bartend, and we've got the most amazing group of people bartending here, but I personally put a lot of effort into making sure that our bartenders know what they're talking about. And so when somebody comes in who doesn't know anything about beer, we can guide them to the beer, because they almost always make this mistake of, I don't really like beer, so just give me your lightest beer.
Nope.
That's the worst thing you could
Yeah,
do.
absolutely.
One of my favorite things back in my beer porn at brewery days would be to be like, just start asking people what they like.
Mm-hmm.
Do you like chocolate? Do you like coffee?
Are you a wine drinker? Are you a whiskey drinker?
Yeah,
What kind of beer do you normally
What
drink?
flavors
Let's
do you
just
like?
throw that out the window.
What flavors do you
Yeah.
like?
What
Beer
do
is
you
a lot-
like?
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you have knowledgeable staff and knowledgeable bartenders, they can get you there. But when someone comes in and says, I don't really like beer, just give me your lightest thing, it's like, I don't really like beer, so give me the beer that tastes most like beer. Like, no, that's the
I couldn't
worst,
agree with you
worst
more on
possible decision you could ever
and,
make.
And honestly, a place like this, if they said, I want a beer that just tastes like beer, well, they all taste like beer.
Yeah,
There is nothing
Beer's a big.
there is nothing up on the menu that doesn't taste like a beer. So let's start over again.
Mm-hmm.
Can you start describing me flavors, sir?
Yeah, our favorite customer is the customer who comes in and says, I don't really know anything, but I'm willing to try.
Yay.
It's
Yeah.
like, all right,
I'm all in.
start pouring them samples. Here's
Right.
this, here's this, here's this,
Right.
here's this. And you can see the light come on behind their eyes, and all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, I had no idea. And it brings me back to that party in college where I had that first Dogfish Head, and it was like, you're having that same experience right now.
Yeah.
You didn't know beer could taste like this.
I would often even say, like, the best part about your brewery, too, is you're not getting, sometimes people go to, like, maybe not as good of breweries for their first breweries, and they're getting muddled products, for lack of a better term. I mean, I've drank thousands of beers and been to hundreds of
Really?
breweries. A shameful amount. Shameful. If somebody ever truly, that's why I had to quit Untappd. I was like, this is getting depressing. But like, you come here, and like, obviously I've drank your beers numerous times, and like every time I have it, it is just the most perfect. Like, these are the flavors you will get. There's no excess, unnecessary off flavors, bad flavors. So like, drinking your rye right now, I just got done with your maple. The maple is a perfect example of a maple lager.
Thank you.
Hints of maple lager, clean finish, has that nice cohesive lager, that calming effect that a lager should have to a certain degree. Got your rye, got that perfect rye flavor, nothing else, because rye is hard to work with. I mean, I've drank a lot of ryes. There's a lot of not great ryes out there.
I love rye, but you're right.
Harsh
It's very
ryes.
hard to make it work.
Yeah, it's gummy, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. And just even drinking rye, like, this is like, if I had to give someone an example, and you're looking at the glass, it's clear. I know clear beers aren't popular, but
No, they're not cool because you're filtering out all the flavor, right?
yeah, right.
Yeah.
To this day, I still love a good beer. You can you can appreciate the cleanliness of a beer.
And I've got the original. Did you use a Belgian yeast in that?
Yep, that's a
Yeah.
Belgian yeast. I love Belgian beer. Always have.
Amen.
From day one when I started getting into beer. I think
Manassas Brewing.
the day after I had that Dogfish Head back in college, I went to a bottle shop and started looking at beers because it honestly had this effect on me. Like, I woke up the next morning, I was like, I need to learn more about beer. So I went out, and I think the first beer I bought was a bottle of Chimay Red.
Oh, yeah.
And I took it home. And I was like, oh, here's this fancy looking, it's in French, like it's from Belgium. I don't know. I'm going to take it home and try it. And it blew my mind.
Amazing.
You know, I've always been obsessed with Belgian beers, and we brew quite a few of them. I also am a huge lager fanatic, so we brew a lot of lagers.
Yeah, well, both, I would say, beers that are heavily dependent on their yeast. You know,
yeah, it's all about yeast.
Yeah. Especially Belgian beers. That's like that region in particular. I mean, lagers, there's some other play in there, but Belgian beers, it's like, you know, you're leading yeast first, and that's one of the. If you're leading with ingredients, you can lead with like a bunch of hops and cover up imperfections. Not to say that everyone that makes an IPA is covering up imperfections.
Definitely not, but it makes it easier.
Yeah, I think one of the
Belgian beers don't give you that.
One of our favorite Irish brewers said you could hide a double-decker bus in some of the double dry hopped IPAs.
I sure can.
Love that guy.
Yeah, he's and who doesn't love an Irish accent, you know? But would you say that, like,
are you talking about Damien?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Love that guy.
I love Damien.
I
didn't even have to say his name.
Well, he's Irish.
Yeah.
There was one of the distributors I worked at. We were a big Summit. You know, we sold a lot of Summits. I have just spent weird amounts of time with that dude for various panel trainings and whatnot. Each time I leave overwhelmed by the amount of knowledge I got and drunk off my ass.
Yeah.
Those two things go hand in hand with every Damien like encounter.
And Irish guys, it's really hard to keep up with them.
Oh, he's so damn charming.
He can drink. Yeah, he and I had a few beers out at the Craft Brewers Conference a few years ago.
Yeah.
It's great. He's a great guy.
Consider me jealous.
Yeah, very good guy.
And I would say, and you can, you know, as we start to wrap up, would you say that people in the craft brewing industry, and, you know, we talk about, you know, there's all this competitiveness and whatever, but wouldn't you say more often than not, there's this camaraderie and willingness to, you know, be more of a cohesive group rather than I'm an individual and I'm over here and you're over there and we can't do anything together?
100% of the competitiveness comes from the number of guys. Guys who are worried about numbers can't worry about the competitive side.
Yeah, I have never experienced the competitive thing.
I can't imagine you being a guy who's like, I don't want to do the number part of that.
I mean, if I were out, you know, schlepping kegs around and trying to move, you know, so many case equivalents of beer at, you know, a liquor store, yeah, I could see how competition arises.
Yeah.
But I don't have any competition with anybody. I'm on a very friendly first name basis with every brewer within 100 miles of here.
Sure.
You know, and we all know each other. We all know each other by name.
And,
and we collaborate sometimes on beers and yeah, it really stems from the early days of the craft beer movement, or, you know, whatever you want to call it, when nobody knew what craft beer was, and it was really just the little guys banding together to try to, you know, fight their way into the market.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've really lost that yet.
That's awesome. That's good.
There's still plenty of Anheuser space to eat, you know.
Oh yeah. There's plenty of that.
Blue Moon, Shock Top, you know. Like,
do they make Shock Top still?
I think somewhere. I don't know.
It's at the golf course back home. I'm pretty sure.
I haven't seen Shock Top.
Anytime I ask for craft beer, that's what they say they got. So.
Yay.
I usually just drink Colorado Kool-Aid. I can drink
That's
a lot of them.
the first time I've heard that called that.
Really?
I would say my favorite beer you've ever made.
Wait, is that just Banquet or is that light?
It's Coors Light.
Okay.
Yeah.
My favorite beer, though, and I'm going to be one of those people, was that I think right when you guys opened, you had like a Belgian strong on, like the Divine Andromedy.
Divine Andromedy? Yeah, we usually brew that in the fall.
Such a fantastic beer.
Thank you. I love that beer. It's been really funny because we obviously we make a German Helles, we make an amber lager, we make a lot of, you know, more straightforward beers that people can just latch onto, and they sell very well for us. And I love Helles. It's one of my favorite styles of beer. I love brewing it. It's probably the hardest style of beer to make in the whole world, so I love the challenge.
What would you say makes it the hardest style to brew?
Because there's just, you know, I mean, people always say this about lagers, but there's nowhere to hide any flaws, right? But in Helles, there's nowhere. Like even with Pilsner, there's hop character in a Pilsner.
Yeah.
There's no hop character in a Helles.
Yeah.
Right.
You have malt, and you've got to make that malt taste awesome and crisp and clean with no flaws. It's a really, really hard style to make. And I love the challenge, and I love drinking it. So I mean, I love that stuff. But these, you know, our Belgian beers, when we first opened, I made all these Belgian beers, and they didn't sell. Yeah. Which is to be expected.
Yeah.
Because people have this. We kind of get two kinds of people: the people who think like, "Oh, I've had Belgian beer before and I didn't like it," or people who just have never had it before and then they try it and they're like, "Whoa, I don't know if I
don't
like
know all these flavors.
I don't know
what
if I like
this?
that." But we've had this amazing thing happen where every time we bring one of our Belgian beers back, because we're constantly rotating beers, every time we bring one back, it sells better and better and better and better and better and better and better.
That's also even, once again, two different mind frames you have going there. Because like I always like to, when I'm doing beer presentations and stuff, be like, there's a distinct difference between German beers and Belgian beers. German beers are very engineered.
Well, German beers are made in Germany and Belgian beers are made in Belgium.
You should, next time you do a presentation, you should start with that.
Yeah, be like, obvious answer, obvious. But like culture-wise, Germany, it's like, they're making these crisp, clean lagers or some kind of like lager-based beer. Oftentimes they're mass-produced or larger production, preciseness. You drink 3 liters at a time. Whereas you get to Manassas or Belgian brewing culture, it is a deep well that is infinitely deep. And there's a reason some of the best brewers in the world come out of Belgium. Like that has to be some of the overall hardest beers to make.
Yeah, I love German beer, and you are right for the most part. There are plenty of tiny German breweries out there that are making unbelievable beer that you will not get outside of their hometown.
Yeah, and that's all the more reason to go to Germany early and often.
Yep. And the Czech Republic is the same way,
isn't it?
It's different from German beer. It's similar, but it's different.
Little different water, a little different.
And just different techniques. A lot of open fermentation for their lagers and double decoction and all that kind of stuff. Different hops, different malt, all that stuff. And similar to German beer, but different. Again, there's tiny breweries making crazy beer that you'll never get. And Belgium, that's exactly what Belgium is. Like there are some monstrous Belgian breweries.
Right.
However,
we can all get Chimay.
But we all know these tiny little breweries like Fantôme or like that we can even get their beer here. But Fantôme's brewery is tiny. Absolutely.
And you say that name, and most people go, "Who?
Who? What? Yeah.
What?"
Well, they're not Saison drinkers.
Right.
I'm a Saison drinker.
I can honestly say that probably not many people in the Eau Claire area are Saison drinkers.
As a number guy, selling a Saison in Wisconsin is really hard.
Real tough. Yeah. Well,
we're in a sweet state that loves its sugar.
I just force it down people's throats. Like, I'm going to keep brewing it, so you got to keep drinking it.
You're right. This is going to be dry. It's going to be peppery, which is not there's no sugar in this, but like, believe me, it's good.
Yeah, I got a Saison in the tank right now, and
I
keep checking the gravity every day, and it's just getting a little bit lower, a little bit lower, a little bit lower, and I'm like, there's no sugar left, and it's still going. Yeah. It's still dropping.
We live in this. There's a reason like Korbel brandy and Moscato
sweet,
and we love sweet in this state. Yeah. That's always the battle is
cheese and sugar. Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, you got like a big rich cheese. You want something dry to cut through that, right?
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Which is why Belgian beer and cheese go so well together.
Belgian beer and food in general.
Absolutely.
It's the most pairable food. We do, well, not with the pandemic, but prior to the pandemic, we did a lot of beer dinners and those kinds of events. I love doing beer dinners because I love beer and I love food. I love good food.
Absolutely.
And so if someone wants to bring me in and have me get drunk on a stage and wax poetically about beer for an hour while we eat really good food, I can.
I tell you, if we ever start doing that again, we'll definitely bring you in. We used to do it back in the day, but Troy's leaving. Yeah. So we're the Taproom travelers, and usually non-pandemic years, that's what we do. We travel.
Yeah.
It's in our name. It's what we do. Troy is probably one of the worst people to travel with.
Always going to the bathroom.
Yeah, and I grew up, obviously I'm not young, so I grew up, in the 80s and the 90s where you just drove everywhere.
Everywhere. Station wagon.
Yeah. And you drove forever.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't stop until you needed gas.
Yeah.
And if you're going to do anything while the gas is being pumped, you better do it before the gas is done.
Real quick. Yeah. That sounds a lot like my childhood.
Yeah. If times have changed. The good thing is at least he's quick.
That was really fast.
Yeah.
You put coffee on top of beer, I'm finished. Yeah. That's my weakness as a human. That's my kryptonite.
So you'd said a little bit about, and we talked a little bit about the pandemic. So have you had to change a lot because of COVID?
Yes.
Yeah.
And actually, we haven't changed anything.
I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure we could do a whole nother podcast just about the changes that you've had to do.
Because a lot of breweries saw a boom in distribution. Obviously, grocery store guys.
Yeah, we're not a distribution brewery.
Right. Yeah, so that was a unique challenge for you guys. For sure.
Yeah. I prior to the pandemic, I was 100% convinced, and I would have told you every day that the taproom model was the safest. It was the future of the beer industry.
Right.
And then the pandemic hit, and all of these, not that all of the breweries were struggling, but we were at a point in the beer industry where more and more tap rooms were opening, taking more and more market share, and the more mid-sized craft breweries were actually kind of hurting for a little while. Dogfish got bought out by Boston Beer, and there were a bunch of really good-sized breweries that closed down. And then all of a sudden the pandemic hits, and now distribution model is the way to go.
You have a 12-pack? Boom.
Yeah. Can you sell me different formats, different sizes,
Right.
12-ounce, 16-ounce, 12-pack, 24-pack, 4-pack, what can you sell?
Give me $1.20 a beer,
Yeah. And, the bigger breweries have better margins, and we have horrible margins when we sell our beer in a package. Because we make very small amounts of beer.
Right.
If we're not selling it over the bar, we're really not making that much money.
Yeah.
Which is a great PSA for if you feel comfortable to come out to a bar right now.
Support your local tap room in any way you can.
And I'm really I like the patio that you guys have out front, and
it's kind of a patio. it's a space in a parking lot.
It's a quarantine space.
It's a space to drink outside.
Yes.
Let's put it that way. And as the weather gets warmer, I think people are starting to get more comfortable. And of course, as people start to get vaccinated, and you guys do a very nice job of making sure that people have masks on when they're roaming around. And everything's sanitized. And so I would say if you are comfortable coming out at all, if you're comfortable going to a grocery store, you can feel comfortable going to a brewery.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure beer would probably also sterilize your throat, right?
Maybe.
I mean, that's how I look at it.
I don't want to put out bad information here. But.
Yeah, through the pandemic, we've been safer than a lot of places have.
Right.
I'm not calling anybody out, but we closed down voluntarily several times when we saw numbers starting to spike, and we thought, all right, we just gotta. My whole goal was let's just get through this and get over this, and
not contribute to it.
I just want the tap room to be full of happy people again,
right?
So
and that's what beer should be about.
Yeah,
you don't want a bunch of angry people in your tap room.
So let's just get through this. So we closed down several times voluntarily. Reopen. Okay, things are getting better. Then cases spike. Okay, time to shut down again. Yeah. Which was tough from a business standpoint for sure. But we brought it on ourselves, so I'm not blaming anybody. But when we are open, we enforce masks. We took out a lot of our seating, and we've had a few people who are not so happy with us.
Right.
We've heard a few, I'm never coming back here again. You make me wear a mask. It's like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
You don't have to wear the mask while you're drinking the beer.
No,
nobody's asking you to do anything ridiculous.
But we do enforce it, and we put up all these barriers, and we took away seating, and we did everything we could. We got rid of snacks and food and stuff, maybe temporarily, maybe forever, who knows.
Yeah.
But what we did here from the minute we opened back up was the people who were coming in here would often say, and we hear it probably every day, that this is the only place I come because it's the only place I feel safe.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that's great.
And I'm not going to let one person who refuses to wear a mask ruin that.
Yeah.
So we're just enforcing it.
That's awesome.
And that's what it is. And if this is the one place people come because they feel safe, then that works for me.
Yeah.
You need one place you can go. Like everyone's at home working with the kids constantly. You just need to occasionally just I need a mental health space. And what better space than that than a brewery?
I need an hour and I need a beer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and we've, now that people are getting vaccinated more and more, and we're very fortunate to be in a state where we're way ahead of the curve in terms of getting people vaccinated.
Oh, for sure.
Agreed.
So
probably because we're all overweight.
Yeah. That's it.
Wisconsin
we drink too much beer.
winning.
But
I knew it was for a good reason.
We've seen
guys.
a lot. We've seen, we're definitely not back to where we would expect to be,
Right.
but more and more, it's getting a little better, and
That's
it's
good.
it's more than it's nice to see some income. It's really just nice to see people who we haven't seen, regulars who haven't been in here in over a year, are finally coming back, and it's just so cool to see those people. And we still remember their favorite beer, and it's pretty fun.
I feel like it's going to be a pretty good next couple months for the beer world, just because we've all been at home drinking those mid-level brewery 12 packs and whatnot, and everyone's kind of like thirsting for something new, something different. Those that's half the fun of craft beer is you don't have to drink the same beer every day. You get to.
And I would say, and we had talked a little bit before we started this, just the taste of draft beer.
Mm-hmm.
You can pour it out of a can and pretend that it's draft, but it's not. It's not the same.
It's not. So I very fortunately do have a kegerator at home.
Yeah.
Because I own a brewery.
Sure.
So why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
I would hope you have at least two.
Yeah. I just got the one, sadly.
Just the one.
But we do have one thing I'm very proud of is our Czech lager taps.
Yeah.
We were the first brewery in the state of Wisconsin to install
the side
them.
pours, yeah.
The side pour
Czech
lager taps. And they're amazing. And when we were shut down, that's what I missed the most, was drinking our lagers off of the side pour lager taps.
I was literally going to say that. You guys have some of the more unique taps, and not in like tap handle, but actual the way the beer flows from the tap is more unique. Would you want to give us a quick like what's going on here?
Yeah, so, well, for our lagers specifically, we pour all of our lagers through these Luker faucets. They're Czech designed, Czech manufactured. I bought them from the Czech Republic. There actually is a company now that sells them in the U.S., but that didn't exist when I bought them. So I had to buy them from a guy named Jan Havranek from the Czech Republic. His English wasn't great, but I think he was like the guy at the company who spoke the best English, so he was the one I dealt with.
I'll be honest with you, not many people over there speak English.
Yeah.
And
if they're not in the service industry, then they definitely don't.
And if they do, it's angry English.
Yeah. So I, fumbled my way, but I was obsessed with these faucets because I'm a lager fanatic, and I love authentic German and authentic Czech lagers. And a big part of what makes different beer styles from different parts of the world so cool has nothing to do with the ingredients or the brewing process, but how they're served. Like English cask beer. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's crazy, and there's nothing like it. You can't fake that.
Yep.
You can try to fake it with nitro, but it's not the same.
Nope.
Right.
I agree with that.
And these Czech lager taps are one of those things. You just cannot fake what they do for the beer. And they will transform a beer into something completely different. And they make it softer and creamier and just really, really beautiful.
Yeah.
And we spent a lot of money on them to import them here from the Czech Republic. Like, honestly, it was at a point where I was like, I don't know if I should buy these things because they're really expensive. But we bought them, we installed them, and now we can pour our lagers in a way that nobody else can.
Yeah.
Right.
It's really cool.
And I would say for those that are listening, if that piques your interest, all the more reason to come in and check it out.
For sure.
And you going back to saying, you were talking about your servers here, they are some of the most knowledgeable that I've been around, and they're fantastic. And they don't make you feel small because you're asking a
we love questions.
Yes.
We love questions.
So ask, even if you think it's the most stupidest question ever, ask it.
Oh, we love
because
it.
They will not make you feel like an idiot.
Good.
Yeah.
You should never feel like an idiot.
Not that I've asked those, but I've witnessed it, and it's great. It's good. And
I've been to craft breweries who shall be go nameless, who are very, very brutal.
It's snobbery, and I have no time for snobbery.
No,
who cares?
We shouldn't. It should be fun. It should be, they don't listen to this, so we're okay.
I'm not to worry about it. That was just the weirdest. That was the weirdest brewery experience I've ever had.
Yeah, well, I've had some weird brewery experiences, but I haven't been to that one. But yeah, I would say just come in and watch it. First of all, watch it be poured, because obviously, if you stand there for even 2 minutes, someone's probably going to order something that's going to be poured out of one of those.
Yep.
and then tell me that you don't want one of those beers because
they look really good,
don't they?
Yeah.
You guys do like a foam pour? There was like a beer that I always hear people talk about.
Milk pour.
Yeah.
So that's a Czech thing. It's called in Czech it's called a Maliko.
Okay.
And it's a pour of foam. And most people when they hear that are like, why would I ever want that?
Also fantastic. I've had several.
Well, and the way these Czech taps pour them, it's a different kind of foam. It's not your typical beer foam. It's a denser, thicker. You can actually drink it.
Yeah.
And it changes the character of the beer when you're drinking just foam instead of drinking beer. It rolls back all of the bitterness. It softens the beer. It's called a milk pour because it looks like a glass of milk, but it has this creaminess to it. It's a lot like cappuccino foam. Kind
Interesting.
of.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to chug them.
Huh.
It's a glass of foam and down the hatch. It's like taking a shot, kind of.
Yeah. Might have to do something after that.
I've done it. Yeah.
And we've got the leafless on right now.
Yep.
It's really good in a milk pour. So highly recommend.
On that note,
I'm gonna go
come in and check that out.
I'm gonna go check a beer, guys.
So hours. What are your hours here at Modicum?
Right now, we're still on our kind of pandemic hours.
Sure.
And that might change. I don't know. We'll see. But we're closed Mondays, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We're open from 3 to 9. Friday we are open from 2 to 10. Saturdays from noon to 10, and Sundays from 2 to 8.
Awesome.
Nice.
And then you're on social media, Facebook, Instagram.
Every once in a while, I'm horrible at posting.
Right. Well, we all are, but that's kind of a good place to check out kind of what's on tap.
If something important is happening, I'll post it.
Nice.
Now, and
new beers.
And if you're in a hurry, you can still come in and buy a 6-pack, correct?
4-packs.
4-packs, yeah.
Yep, we sell 4-packs, and we now sell growlers.
Okay. Wow. So if you're in a hurry, you can still grab something.
Yep. Yeah, so we've always got good selection of cans.
Awesome.
So check them out. Check us out. Check Taproom Travelers. Believe it or not, that is our actual name. We're not the Taproom Takeover guys. We are the Taproom Traveler guys, even though this is the Taproom Takeover podcast because we like to come up with tongue twisters for all of our stuff. So
we like making word soup.
Yeah, isn't it great? Check us out on all the social media channels that you possibly can, even Twitter, believe it or not. And then, of course, we do a weekly vlog on YouTube. You can check that out. And someday, we may do another full episode again.
Maybe we'll do Ambivalent.
We'll do it right here at Modicum. Yeah.
Make sure you guys
Which brewery? Sorry.
Modicum. You guys have any beer? Tired. 6-week-old baby.
It's always an excuse. So anyway, thank you for listening to the Taproom Takeover podcast. Thank you to Eric for having us out at Modicum. Come check them out in Altoona the next time that you can. We will talk to you. We will talk to you next week.
You most certainly not be disappointed by the beer.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's always a great time. So we will talk to you next week, everybody. Prost.
Yeah, thank you.